After months of resistance, Turkey has finally agreed to back Sweden's bid to join the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Kirby Trinidad reports.
As the NATO summit kicked off in Lithuania this week, members of the alliance hailed the first day of the annual meeting as historic after Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan agreed to forward Sweden's NATO bid to the Turkish parliament.
NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg hailed the move as historic, as last-minute negotiations saw Erdoğan soften its stance and drop its opposition towards Sweden after a year of blocking the move. Stoltenberg said Turkey finally agreed to move forward following talks in Vilnius, Lithuania, with Erdoğan and Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson on Tuesday.
Good evening. I have just had a constructive meeting with President Erdoğan and Prime Minister Kristersson. I'm glad to announce that as a result, President Erdoğan has agreed to forward the accession protocol for Sweden to the Grand National Assembly as soon as possible, and work closely with the Assembly to ensure ratification.
The NATO chief, however, did not specify when will Sweden become an official member of the alliance or when Erdoğan would move the document forward to the Turkish parliament, which must then vote to approve it. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, who also attended the summit, said the bloc has not yet provided any time frame nor a formal invitation for Ukraine to join the bloc. Meanwhile, the move is seen as a major win for Sweden's right-wing Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson, who made Sweden's membership a key foreign policy priority since taking over as Swedish leader in October.
Before the historic breakthrough, Erdoğan urged the European Union to open a way for Ankara's accession to the bloc in exchange for considering Sweden's NATO bid. However, the European Commission was quick to reject the idea, stating that the EU and NATO are two different processes and are not related. Reporting from Sweden, this has been Kirby Trinidad, SI.
In other news, President Vladimir Zelensky had a more conciliatory tone on the second day of the summit, and this is after he criticized NATO leaders for not providing his country with a clear timeline for a membership in the alliance, saying that it is unprecedented and absurd. Carlo de la Peña tells us more.
Zelensky has accused NATO of not showing enough respect for its unwillingness for the immediate membership for Ukraine. The Ukrainian president made the remarks as NATO kicked off its summit in Vilnius, Lithuania, citing signals he had received which indicated that Ukraine would not be given an invitation of any sort to join NATO. In a statement on social media, Zelensky said, and quote, "We value our allies, we value our shared security, and we always appreciate an open conversation. Ukraine will be represented at the NATO summit in Vilnius because it is about respect, but Ukraine also deserves respect. It's unprecedented and absurd when a time frame is not set neither for the invitation nor for Ukraine's membership, while at the same time vague wording about conditions is added even for inviting Ukraine." End of quote. Zelensky also claimed that NATO's indecisiveness was a sign of the bloc's weakness. Reports citing the most recent version of NATO's draft communique states that it will be in a position to extend an invitation to Ukraine when allies agree and conditions are met. However, Zelensky hits out at NATO for its seemingly unreadiness to neither invite the country to the alliance nor to make it a member of it. According to the Ukrainian president, this means that a window of opportunity is being left to bargain Ukraine's membership in NATO in negotiations with Russia. The Ukrainian president's remarks did not go unnoticed by NATO, with a political report citing an unnamed senior diplomat from Central Europe saying that Zelensky was going too far and that such remarks is not a thoughtful and fair approach from him. U.S. Republican Senator Rand Paul also criticized Zelensky, saying that the Ukrainian president might need to recalibrate his complaints to avoid alienating his Western allies. Paul said, and quote, "We've given them $100 billion, and he has the audacity to be brazen as to tell us we'd better speed it up? I'd say that's audacious. I'd say it's brazen, and it's not very grateful for the $100 billion that we've given him so far." End of quote. Meanwhile, NATO has reaffirmed its readiness to give Ukraine membership at some point in the future, but it will be allowed to bypass the bloc's Membership Action Plan, or MAP, which is usually required for candidate members. NATO's statement read, End quote. We reaffirm the commitment we made at the 2008 summit in Bucharest that Ukraine will become a member of NATO. And today we recognize that Ukraine's path to full Euro-Atlantic integration has moved beyond the need for the membership action plan. End of quote. NATO said Ukraine has become increasingly interoperable and politically integrated with the US-led bloc, but outlined Ukraine's need for more democratic and security sectoral reforms. It can be remembered that NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg said that NATO must first ensure that Ukraine achieves a victory in its fight with Russia. However, the NATO chief warned that if Ukraine did not succeed, then its membership in the alliance will be out of the question. Reporting, this has been Carlo de la Peña, SMNI News.
Prime Minister Hun Sen reiterated his appeal against using forbidden weapons of war by urging NATO member states to oppose America's plan to provide cluster bombs to Ukraine. Sandy Abuela reports.
As the two-day North Atlantic Treaty Organization kicked off in Lithuania, Cambodia Prime Minister Hun Sen urged NATO and U.S. allies to dissuade U.S. in its plan to send cluster munitions to Ukraine. Prime Minister Hun Sen opposed America's plan to send deadly cluster bombs to Ukraine in the fight against Russia. Following the announcement of U.S. transfer of $800 million worth of cluster munitions to Ukraine, Hun Sen urged member states to oppose this plan. In a tweet, he said, quote, "On behalf of the head of the royal government of Cambodia, I would like to continue to call on NATO member states and some U.S. allies, including the United Kingdom, Spain, Germany, and Canada, all of which are signatories to the Convention of the Prohibition of the Cluster Munitions, to take responsibility and participate in preventing U.S. President Joe Biden and the President of Ukraine not to use this deadly weapon. I know for sure that Cambodia is small and weak, but out of compassion for the people of Ukraine, I call on the President of the United States, the donors, and the President of Ukraine, the recipient, to refrain from using cluster munitions in this war, because the real victims are the Ukrainian people." End of quote. The Cambodian Prime Minister said that the pain of the country in the 1970s, in which U.S. dropped cluster bombs, is still felt after more than 50 years ago and completely not yet been eradicated. Meanwhile, Natalia Shinkina, the deputy head of mission and political counselor of the Embassy of Ukraine in Vietnam, said that the Ukraine understand the concerns of Prime Minister Hun Sen, but likely said that there are not so many options apart from using the cluster munitions. Shinkina said, and the need of these cluster bombs was seriously taken after weighing carefully and confirmed that the specified munition at this stage of repelling Russians meets the most urgent needs of Ukrainian forces. The U.S. will send cluster munitions to Ukraine as part of a new military aid package. President Joe Biden in an interview said that they've run out of ammo, that's why they have decided to provide such weapons. Meanwhile, the Cambodian Mine Action Center conducted a training on the use of lineman detection equipment for the State Emergency Service of Ukraine. The equipment used in the training was developed in Japan and is expected to improve through the use of radar that can determine the shapes of the mine even if it's still buried. This training was the result of the joint commitment between Prime Minister Hun Sen, the Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Cambodia, and Prime Minister Kishida Fumio of Japan in their bilateral meeting during the 2022 ASEAN summits and other related summits in Cambodia. Rika Prichinumpen, Sandy Abuela, SMNI News, Cambodia.